What is going on, guys? Taylor, aka Red Ranger 02 here, and I'm back with another video. And welcome everyone to the very first episode of a new series that is going to be started on this channel called Ranger Adept. Now, I've done 2 videos of this in the past, and just a quick and very brief summary. Ranger Adept is inspired by the Sentai Potential series done by Thomas Jujubee on his YouTube channel. Go check him out. His Sentai Potential stuff is awesome. But unlike Thomas, where he just takes a look at unadapted Sentai that we've skipped over and how they could possibly be adapted into this. These are all fanfiction adaptations that I am going by. So every ranger, weapon, everything is going to show up in the sales specs, which is going to be in the second part of this video. So for this first episode, I'm not going to be doing a reboot series, which is rebooting one of the original Power Rangers seasons, or doing an adaptation, which is adapting one of these skipped Sentai, so something like Tokyuger, or something even earlier, like, say, GX. Today I'm going to be presenting to you guys a Power Ranger series that I've come up with on my own, and it is called Power Rangers Aqua Force. Now, I've stated this before, Power Rangers Aqua Force has a huge principle on technology, magic, and of course Atlantis. So, with all that being said, let's get into the basic plot. Thousands of years ago, when Atlantis once stood as an island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, unlike the rest of the world, they decided to try something risky. Where most of mankind were too afraid to try this, the Atlanteans decided to take matters into their own hands and began to blend magic with technology that they had designed. And because of this, throughout the years, they became one of the most technologically advanced civilizations that anyone knew about. However, there was another technologically advanced civilization that existed deep underwater. They were the Trench. And the Trench were basically aquatic mutants. They were evil. They weren't evil. They were just kind of easily intimidated. And to see Atlantis make these technological progressions so quickly with this, and especially the way that they do things, they did in the same manner, combining magic with technology, they decided that they were going to attack the Atlanteans head on. Now, this ended up being in an entire war, and eventually the Lord of the Trenches was sent down. He was trapped by the 7 Seers, which were 7 Atlanteans who, instead of merging magic just with technology, they themselves used magic. But not only did they use it to seal the Lord of the Trenches away, but they ended up seeing a prophecy, one that ended up telling about Atlantis in the future. Of course, because of this war, Atlantis was no longer an island on the surface. Instead, Atlantis sunk to the bottom of the ocean, and while it did not become a part of the Trenches, it became its own standalone kingdom that vast the seas. And the prophecy was this: 3 humans of the surface world, with willpower unmatched by any Atlantean, would be able to see through Atlantis' magical defenses and discover Atlantis after thousands of years. When that happened, the Lord of the Trenches would re-emerge, and it was time for 3 new heroes to protect not only Atlantis, but to protect the surface world, as they will have made technological advancements pretty far by then as well. And so that is the basic plot for this. So, let's go ahead and let's get into the first episode. Now, the first episode centers around 3 college students that had originally lived in Angel Grove and are best friends. There is Matt, there is Andrew, and there is Natalie. Natalie is the intellectual one of the group, and obviously the token female. Andrew is kind of the over-exaggerated one. He's over the top. His personality always seems to be energy. And then there is Matt, the well-balanced one of the group, and he is definitely the one that has held them together through thick and thin. And despite Andrew and Natalie being a couple, he's what's held this group of friends together since they were children in Angel Grove. But years later, when they all decided to go to college, they all decided to go to college to study the exact same thing: marine biology, as they all wanted to become marine biologists or do something with marina life in general. So their professor, Professor Dent, ended up actually talking to one of his old scuba instructors, was actually able to schedule a scuba expedition for his class. Free of charge, as a matter of fact. So Matt, Andrew, and Natalie ended up going on the scuba expedition, and while they were wading through the waters of the Atlantic Ocean, they soon discovered something. A weird shimmering barrier within the water. The minute they crossed it, they saw Atlantis. They saw the long-forgotten city and were approached by the Atlanteans. While none of the guards really trusted them at first, it was the leader of the guard who remembered the old prophecy, the leader of the guard being Calypso. Calypso ended up basically telling them that, hey, you guys need to talk to our king, and so brought our 3 college students to King Caden. King Caden is the current ruler of Atlantis and is well over thousands of years old. Due to the advancement of Atlantean technology, people have lived for thousands of years. Not only that, but they've evolved underwater, as they were once normal humans, but now they are strong, they are hardy, they can breathe underwater and even talk to certain aquatic life. And King Caden basically tells them the events of how Atlantis eventually fell, but said that the Lord of the Trenches was going to return, that these 3 college students were the heroes of the prophecy that the 7 seers spoke of years ago. And one little thing to make note of, I say 7 seers. Now the reason I say 7 seers, 7 seers, the 7 seas, seers, I thought that was kind of clever. Anyway, the Lord of the Trenches ends up awakening. The Lord of the Trenches being none other than the dreaded Kraken. The Kraken summons his generals, these being General Nemone, General Tidal, and General Mega, and even summons his right-hand woman to his side, being Siren, and summons his armies of Riptides and the rest of his trench army. He ends up summoning them, and they are going to not only find and attack Atlantis, but they're going to attack the surface world, for one reason only. They saw Atlantis as a threat because they were mixing magic and technology and making such technological advancements like the trenches. We, as the surface world, have not integrated magic into our technology. So for us to actually make these technological leaps that are similar to that of both the Atlanteans and the trenches now see the surface world as a threat. And so, back in Atlantis, King Caden gives our 3 college students morphers in order to become the Power Rangers Aqua Force. These are the combat changed morphers. They kind of look similar to the Lost Galaxy morpher, with something that ends up kind of symbolizing which ranger it not only belongs to, but the actual morpher itself kind of looks like it's encased in like a pearly conch shell. And then there is a bar that comes out of the morpher. This brings in the combat change dynamic of this. The morpher has 2 functions: to allow them to fight like Atlantean warriors under the water, and to fight like Atlantean warriors on the surface world. And so this thing has 2 modes, Aqua mode and Surface mode. In activating one of these modes, the Rangers will have one of 2 different Ranger suits. One that is slightly more armored, and that being the Aqua suit, and one that utilizes the armor more evenly throughout the body to make it look more like a traditional Ranger suit, and that being the Surface mode. So, the Rangers end up taking on the Morphers, and these are who they are. Natalie being the Blue Octopus Ranger, being that she's the intellectual one, it makes sense for her to have an octopus as a Zord and associated animal, because the octopus is one of the smartest underwater creatures that has ever existed, according to science. Because of his energetic and electrifying personality, Andrew is the Yellow Electric Eel Ranger. And because he's kind of the big honcho, the big king of it all, Matt is the red killer whale ranger. And together, they end up being, of course, the Power Rangers Aqua Force. When the Trenches and Riptide end up attacking Atlantis, the Rangers go out and fight them head on with the morphing call, "It's morphin' time! Tidal wave!" Basically encasing them in magical waters, which then give them their Ranger suits. In their Aqua modes, they have the Typhoon Breaker, which is kind of a reuse of the Mercury Spear, I think is what it was called in Operation Overdrive. Tizon's weapon. While I did not like Tizon really in the slightest, or Operation Overdrive for that matter, I thought that the weapon was cool enough that I might want to actually use it for this. So, I ended up using it as the weapon for them in their Aqua modes. They end up fighting the Trenches and the Riptides, forcing the Trench monster up to the surface, which causes them to switch into their surface mode. In doing so, they no longer have access to the Typhoon Breaker, which is their spear/gun weapon, but instead have access to the Blade Defender. The Blade Defender is a special sword and shield combo that looks kind of rectangular on their arms, but when they draw the sword, the actual rectangle pops open to become a shield. But when they put the sword back in, they can actually transform it into a blaster weapon that they can use for long-range combat. They soon come together and destroy the Trench, and the day is saved. And thus, the Power Rangers Aqua Force continue. Now, that is the plot and basically what happens in the first episode. Now, for the rest of this, I'm going to be talking about introductions to new weapons, introductions to new Megazords, introductions to new Rangers, and of course, major character development. And one of the biggest parts of character development actually happens in the second episode. Towards the end of the episode, King Caden and Calypso are talking, and Calypso's actually worried about the young college students, saying that she doesn't want to lose more friends, she doesn't want to lose more family, and King Caden responding with, "Don't worry, this won't be like last time." When Matt asks him what he meant by that, King Caden brushes it off, saying, "Don't worry about it." This immediately kind of puts some kind of mistrust in between Matt and King Caden, which only grows more in the third episode. Well, also in the second episode, the Aqua Force Megazord is debuted. The Octopus Zord, basically, the head splits at the top, and the four legs come together to become the front part of the Megazord legs. Meanwhile, the Killer Whale Zord, the tail will go back and split into two, becoming the back half of the Megazord legs. And because of the way the octopus head actually splits in half, it will basically kind of look like a medieval side skirt in a way. For the eel, he will split in half, and two pegs will actually come down out of the sides of the Killer Whale Zord. It will plug into the sides and become the arms, one being the eel head, which can shoot out lightning, and the other being his tail, which will act as the Megazord sword. Then the killer whale head can come off, attach to the chest, which is kind of inspired by the RPM Mach Megazord, I believe that's what it's called, and reveal the Megazord head. So, that is that for the Aqua Force Megazord. But like I said, this mistrust between Matt and King Caden only grows after events happen in the third episode. In the third episode, it is revealed by one of the Trenches to Matt that King Caden isn't being honest with them, at least being completely honest with them about Atlantis' past. And so, after a Megazord battle, which debuts the Surface Mode Megazord, being the Battle Sub Megazord, which kind of looks somewhat similar to the SPD SWAT Megazord in certain regards, Matt talks to King Caden and ends up saying, "Listen, there's something that you're not telling us, and if we're going to work together, you need to tell us. What is it that you're hiding?" And so King Caden tells them the truth. They are not the first Aqua Force Power Rangers team. When the war first broke out between the Trenches and Atlantis, they created a team of Aqua Force Rangers that were based around sharks. There were the Yellow Sawtooth Shark Ranger, the Blue Goblin Shark Ranger, and the Red Megalodon Ranger. And unfortunately, Yellow and Blue did not survive, and Blue was actually Calypso's older brother. Hence why she says she doesn't want to lose more family. And so, while unfortunately Yellow and Blue were lost, the fate of the Red Ranger was much worse. Lord Kraken ended up using a lot of his dark magic and mutated the Red Ranger into one of his generals, this being General Mega. Hence why he's General Mega. He was the Megalodon Ranger. It kind of makes sense. Anyway, for this, they end up moving forward with it. They fight more bad guys. But eventually by, I think it's episode 10 or 12 that I have this written, General Mega actually goes to Lord Kraken and says that he still has his old Aquaforce Morpher. And if they were to actually utilize the power, Lord Kraken's power, they could not only revive the old broken down Sawtooth and Goblin Shark Zords, but they could end up making the Red Megalodon Zord so much stronger and create new Rangers associated with them. Therefore, this began and created the 3 Trench Rangers. The white and black would be random Riptides that were chosen by General Mega, as he didn't trust General Nemini or General Title because they had talked about possibly overthrowing Kraken at this point, because he wasn't doing a good enough job in trying to destroy Atlantis and the surface world, in their opinion. And so he chose random Riptides. And while they were a nuisance to the Rangers for a while, even sporting their own Megazord, being the Jaws Megazord, you know, because they're all sharks. Jaws. I thought I was clever. Leave me alone. Anyway, they soon discovered a brand new power that allowed them to beat down the evil Trench Rangers. You know how the prophecy said that 3 surface dwellers of immense willpower would be able to defeat them? Well, their willpower was so strong that they were able to activate the surface and aqua modes at the exact same time. And not only were they able to do that, but they injected even more of their willpower into the form, activating the red, blue, and yellow berserker forms. These things were freaking strong, and not only could they use the Typhoon Breaker and the Blade Defender, but they could use them where they weren't normally meant to. They could use the Blade Defender underwater. They could use the Typhoon Breaker on the surface. And not only that, but their Megazord even received a bit of an energy boost. And because of this new Berserker mode, they were able to defeat the Trench Rangers. Well, not completely defeat. They incapacitated the Red Megalodon Trench Ranger, but truly defeated the White and Black Trench Rangers, and took their Trench Morphers, their Trench Changers. The reason why? Well, Matt brought it up to King Caden. Well, the prophecy said that there would be 3 Rangers who would be the ones to actually bring down the evil trenches. It didn't necessarily say they had to be the only ones. And so they took the Trench Changers and converted their energy into 2 new combat change morphers, and gave them to 2 exchange students that had ended up paying a visit to their college, these being Connor and Caitlin. Connor and Caitlin were brother and sister, and were chosen to be the White Sawtooth Shark Ranger and the Black Goblin Shark Ranger. Well, Caitlin was the White Sawtooth Shark, Connor was the Black Goblin Shark Ranger. And with this, they were able to now combine with the Aquaforce Megazord to achieve Aquaforce Megazord, to achieve the Aquaforce Knight Megazord. A brand new Megazord configuration that utilized all 5 of the Zords, and was very impressive. But they soon realized that General Mega was still indeed alive, and they began to have to face the new Megalodon Megazord. The only reason I ended up doing that is just that way I can say Megalodon Megazord. Tell me that does not sound somewhat catchy. Megalodon Megazord. Moving on. Anyway, throughout all of this, they end up also gaining new weapons. Not new weapons, they gain new Zords. They ended up gaining 2 new Battle Sub-Zords, but later on, they find out more about the old Aqua Force Rangers. And it turns out General Mega was the original king of Atlantis. That he was King Trident. Or so they believed. Later on, it was revealed that General Mega was actually Trident's younger brother, who actually took over for him because Trident had received a very bad injury during the original war. And what came of King Trident? Well, he stayed on the surface world, but paid regular visits to Atlantis secretly. But where was he? Well, he was teaching at a college. Professor Dent is King Trident. Yes, he is basically directly responsible for the Rangers becoming, well, the Rangers. And so he displays his own morpher, the Royal Trident morpher. This thing is not only his main weapon, but again, it's also his morpher. Come on! How is that not freaking awesome? And throughout this, he ends up revealing that he ends up having his own Megazord hidden within Atlantis itself, the Neptune Megazord, which can in turn not only fight underwater, but fight on the surface as well. And not only can it fight in the water and on the surface, but it can combine with the Aqua Force Megazord or the Battle Sub Megazord, creating either the Aqua Force King Ultra Zord or the Battle Sub King Ultra Zord. And these would be their regular go-to Zords from now on. These would be their regular go-to Megazord formations. And throughout this, more and more they ended up winning. They eventually destroyed both General Nemone and General Tidal. They even finally ended up managing to beat General Mega and destroy the Megalodon Zord. The only person that they had left to fear was Kraken himself. And so, Kraken came to the surface for the first time in his entire existence. And it was time for the Rangers to all go at it. An epic fight ends up breaking out between all 6 Rangers and King Kraken. But unfortunately, the Rangers aren't able to keep up. Even the 6th Ranger, the Gold Trident Ranger, he's unable to keep up. And he's supposed to be the king of Atlantis. If he couldn't keep up with Lord Kraken, who was going to be able to defeat them? Well, they then showed why they were the humans of prophecy. They ended up obtaining their Berserker modes once again, and using all of their willpower, ended up summoning their Zords and blasting him with enough energy to not only destroy Lord Kraken, but evaporate a good chunk of water nearby, and allowing Atlantis to almost become part of the surface world once again. And so that's what happens. They helped Atlantis rejoin the surface world, and everything goes as planned. Everything is pretty much hunky-dory. And that is Power Rangers Aqua Force. It's very rough, and it's kind of rushed the way I'm doing this. But I also have very limited space on my memory card. So I'm trying to do the best with what I have, and as you guys can probably hear throughout the video, my voice is getting, like, I'm losing it. So, there is that, you guys. I want to give a big shout out. You guys can't see her right now, but I want to give a big shout out to my little sister, Zoe. She is behind the camera. You can technically say something if you want to, kiddo.
Hi, guys.
Zoe has, for the last couple of videos that I've done, besides the ones that I've been taking on my phone, she's kind of been my one-man camera crew, or one-woman camera crew. She helps me out with the lighting and how I can do things. She tries to manage noise as best as she can. So, if you guys can't, and please, 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 if you're not going to give this video any kind of love for the idea of Power Rangers Aqua Force, that's fine, but give her some love in the comments down below. I have to say, honestly, I don't think I would be even considering doing this series if it weren't for her kind of just listening to all my nerd rants and being like, why don't you do YouTube videos on this? So, a big thank you to her, and let me know what you guys did think of Aqua Force. Was it a good idea? Was it a crappy idea? Or what could I do to make the idea better? All for constructive criticism. Constructive criticism. If you just tell me that this idea sucks and you should go die in a hole, your comment is getting deleted. Trust me. I am watching you. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this video. And look out for part 2 coming out tomorrow. So, guys, this is Red Ranger 2, signing out. Power down!